Good afternoon and welcome to News 24. We are discussing President Cyril Ramaphosa's appointment of the new National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Shamila Batohi. Joining me today is Lawson Naidu of the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution and News 24 Editor-in-Chief Adrian Basson. Gentlemen, after what felt like a very long 3 months of having an acting National Director of Public Prosecutions, we finally have someone permanently in the position. And it's someone who seems to be very keen to restore credibility to the NPA as soon as possible. What are your first thoughts on the appointment?
Well, as CASAC, we welcome the appointment of Advocate Batohi. We think that she's a strong candidate. I think the 5 shortlisted candidates were all strong candidates, and we have to commend them for putting themselves through a very grueling process and they, demonstrating their commitment to the NPA and the rule of law. So I think the institution is now in good hands, and she will need the support of senior managers within the NPA in order to be able to turn around that institution.
Adrian, what do we know about Advocate Batohi? Why do we think she's a good appointment in the position?
No, I agree with Lawson. I think her appointment instills confidence. She's a senior person. She comes from the ranks of the NPA. I must just say for the record that just shortly after Sean Abrams was appointed head of the NPA, I said on camera that I think it's a good appointment because he had such a good reputation as being a good prosecutor in courts, which obviously doesn't make you a good NDPP because there's so much political pressure on that position. And that's going to be her first big test, if she starts prosecuting some ANC politicians, for example, whether she will withstand that pressure that there is. Look, she's a senior prosecutor. She spent the last decade in The Hague, where she worked at the International Criminal Court, where she would have seen some of the worst war criminals in the world being prosecuted. She comes from South Africa. She loves the country. She was full of passion this afternoon in her first speech. So I think she had a good interview, but she's got a lot of work on her hands. It's also one of those cases where I'm almost worried about all the expectations there is on this one person to save an organization. Like Lawson said, she cannot do it alone. There's absolutely no way she can fix the issues at top level, but also the smaller issues at a regional court in the Northern Cape, that is plagued by issues. So she needs the strong support. She needs strong directors of public prosecution at provincial level, and she has to seriously consider bringing in some of those other excellent candidates on the shortlist.
Absolutely. Lawson, during her interview, she described the NPA as a house on fire. Certainly, she's not naive to the challenges that lie ahead. Do you think she's capable of doing the job?
Well, I think this afternoon in the few remarks she made after the appointment was announced, I think she conveyed to us that she really does understand the scale of the problem. And even though she's been away for such a long time from South Africa, she clearly has a very good grasp on what's going on at the NPA. I don't think she underestimates the task at hand. And she, as she said, she's up for the fight, and she wants to make a contribution to the NPA in South Africa, and I think she will be able to do so. But as Adrian says, she's going to need the support of people, not just within the NPA, but from broader South African society to say that the rule of law is important to us, that the ability of the NPA to execute its constitutional mandate is important.
Let's talk about the way her appointment came about. President Cyril Ramaphosa appointing a panel to interview a short list of candidates for the first time in our history that it was done that way. What do you think of that way and of the way he did it? And was there perhaps a political reason for doing it the way he did?
Look, I mean, if we want to go back into the history of the National Director of Public Prosecution, of course, that is a constitutional being. Before 1994, we didn't have an NDPP. We had Attorney General, So the whole NPA was a democratic creation, but it was always a political appointment. Even Bulelani Ngcuka and Vusi Pikoli, who are generally accepted now as having been good NDPPs, were political appointments, both coming from the ANC. Shamila Batohi is the first really non-political appointment as NPA head. Although she was appointed by Ramaphosa, she's not a politician. She doesn't come from the ranks of the ANC as a politician. She was never in parliament. She's always been a career lawyer. So, I think that's good. I think the way the process was handled gave the public a feeling that it's much more transparent. They saw these interviews on TV, which I also thought was a great call by the North Gauteng High Court to open up the hearings to the public, much more like the Judicial Service Commission this time, where judges are actually interviewed in front of the public's eyes. So I like the fact that it was open and transparent, that they were kind of grilled by the panel, the all-men panel, who ultimately picked a woman, you know, and I think that's also something to be celebrated, the fact that she's the first permanent woman in DPP.
Well, we've said that she has massive challenges lying ahead, but let's get down to some of the specifics. What are some of the first things that you would like her to see do as she goes into office at the NPA?
Well, I think, you know, there are many challenges. I think one of the most important, though, is to restore staff morale at the NPA. As Adrian said, it's not just about the high-profile cases, but it's to ensure that the ordinary victims of crime get justice in the magistrates' courts around the country. And that's about ensuring that prosecutorial officers across the country are able to really do their jobs properly, that the staff are appointed to fill the vacancies that exist, that adequate resources are given to prosecutors, so that the criminal justice system really starts to deliver to the people of South Africa. That's one of her first key challenges. I think the high-profile political cases will take care of themselves in due course. But I think restoring the credibility of the institution has got to start at a grassroots level, so that ordinary South Africans feel that this institution is actually serving them.
Also, a lot has been said about the lack of skills and the lack of capacity in the NPA to actually prosecute complex, high-profile cases. What does she have to do to get that skills back into the organization?
Look, Alet, I think there are definitely still a lot of competent, hardworking prosecutors left in the NPA. It's not as if every good prosecutor has left the building. Just thinking of people like Advocate Andrea Johnson, one of the candidates for NDPP, a senior prosecutor in Pretoria. She did the Oscar Pistorius trial. She worked on the Kebble trial, Jackie Celebi. Billy Dano, who's again back in court with the Jacob Zuma trial. Rodney de Kock, the DPP of the Western Cape, very senior guy, highly respected. And I can continue. So they are definitely good people. What the NPA lacked was a political will to prosecute without fear of favor. After prosecuting people like Shabir Sheikh and Jackie Celebi, there was a kind of chilling effect on the NPA, specifically after this closure of the Scorpions that was actually based inside the NPA. There was definitely a chilling effect on the institution, and people like Ngobo Jiba obviously contributed to that in not tackling the high-profile political cases. So I think she has to assemble a crack team around her that works on the high-profile corruption cases. I think she has to prioritize that, and specifically these issues around state capture. You know, we often get asked by our readers during the Zondo Commission, for example, but why aren't there prosecutions? All these things that's coming out of the Zondo Commission are criminal offences, a lot of them, but nobody's been arrested, nobody's been convicted. And we saw as early as last week the withdrawal of the Istina case in Bloemfontein, for example, where even during our own investigations into the Gupta leaks, we could trace money flowing from the Free State provincial government to fund that farm, and ultimately the Gupta wedding through a money laundering scheme. So, you know, the NPA has to have this capacity. If she doesn't have it, she's going to have to go and fetch people, some other ex-South African prosecutors who were also working with her at the ICC, others who may have gone into a private practice, someone like Advocate Mklotswa, who was the DPP in KwaZulu-Natal, but left after the immense pressure on him to drop cases against politicians. She may want to bring someone like that back, and I think symbolically that's going to be important.
The relationship between the NPA and the Hawks and crime intelligence has also suffered over the past few years, let's say the past decade or so. Is there anything that she can do from a leadership position in the NPA to mend those fences and create a situation where all these forces work together to successfully prosecute criminals?
Well, I think, you know, this is another step forward. We've now had a change of leadership at SAPS, at the Hawks, now at the NPA, and hopefully this new leadership core that is there within the criminal justice system will be able to work together more effectively, identify the gaps and weaknesses that they have, whether it's in terms of forensic investigations, in terms of having prosecutors who are able to deal with complex cases. And I think, to add to what Adrian said, it's not just about bringing back people, but I think this is also an opportunity for the private legal sector to come to the fore, and senior advocates in private practice to volunteer their services to the NPA in this intermittent period to fill those skills gaps that may be there and ensure that capacity building takes place and that those complex cases are handled properly.
They may have to take a pay cut though.
I'm hoping they're going to do it for nothing.
Exactly. Lawson, did you hear also what was interesting for me during Shamila Batohi's interview was she referred to that section of the NPA Act that allows the NPA investigative capacity. And that was the act that was the part that was used to establish the Scorpions. And I'm just sticking out my neck here, but I wonder if at the back of her mind she doesn't have some kind of idea here of bringing back some kind of investigative capacity. Because I let you remember what made the Scorpions so unique was that from investigative phase, there was a prosecutor, an investigating officer, and an analyst working on these true investigations, which proved internationally very successful, especially in complex commercial crimes matters. Right. So I'm just wondering if we need to watch this space.
As CASAC, we raised that issue as well recently. Having noted that the Act still provides for the establishment of these special investigating directorates. It will require the approval of the President to do so. But I think that the very fact that Advocate Batohi raised it in an interview means that she really is thinking ahead about how to increase the effectiveness of the NPA and the criminal justice system in tackling these complex cases.
Absolutely. Lastly, Adrian, I want to ask you about our very infamous corruption case currently going on in KwaZulu-Natal. Our former president. That case is on the roll. It's proceeding. It's been postponed to May at the moment. What is this appointment? How does this appointment affect the Zuma case, if at all?
No, it shouldn't. The case is running. It's on the roll. Zuma is bringing a permanent stay application, so is Tint. I think, Shamila Batohi in a way also missed the past decade. She missed the Zuma years. She left the country, I think, in 2009 to go to the ICC. So in a way, she's untainted by all of that that's happened. Not that the prosecutors involved are tainted, but she wasn't here during that phase when the case was delayed, the spy tape saga, etc. So she comes in with a clean pair of eyes. And hands. That case is rolling. I don't think she's not gonna make any big waves to, withdraw the case, etc. She's gonna want the case to run its course. I think for me the more interesting stuff to look at now, the interesting cases are the Mdluli case, for example. We know the pressure that those prosecutors were under to withdraw that case. The state capture cases, is she going to actually come up and pressurize her prosecutors to start prosecuting some of these cases involving former President Zuma. So that's where I'm looking forward to.
Well, she certainly has her work cut out for her. And of course, we will be following her closely. That's all we have time for today. Make sure to follow us on News 24 and on Twitter at the handle @News24. Thank you for watching.